Good morning. I'm Jeff Tucker with Perlick. We have factory engineered and designed your beer system. Brian Bender with our rep out here in Wisconsin. He represents us locally. We'll be going through Beer 101 real quick. Talk about the system that we've installed here at the Bucks Arena and answer any questions you may have. If you turn to the first page, you will see the numbers to call when you're in trouble, which is what everybody wants to see. Now let's talk about the book and let's talk about real world. If your bartender says, hey, we got a leaky faucet, or I snapped off my handle, it just snapped right off the top of the faucet. Your first call is to your draft manager, the wholesaler you're buying your beer from. He's got guys on site 24/7 with trucks full of little parts and pieces like that. He's going to fix that for you like that. In fact, you should make sure you develop a great relationship with your draft manager because he's going to take care of all your small needs. Your coupling washers that get lost and fall off, the washer behind the faucet that gets nicked when they take the faucet off to clean it, and that's why it's dripping beer. That draft manager, his technicians from the wholesaler are going to have all those on their trucks. So for all the little parts and pieces, wear and tear things, you should leverage him to the max to get as much free work out of him as you can. When it's a big issue and you've got to call in the Marines, you call the beer medic, Dave Gilbert. Dave is a local installer here in Milwaukee. He's been trained on your particular system. In fact, he's helping doing the startup within the arena itself. So he's going to have touched every cooler, every panel kit, every bar. He's going to be intimately familiar with your system. Brian is our local Perlick rep from Specialty Marketing. When you've got a question on equipment, you need something, you want something, something broke, it's under warranty, Brian's your first call. If you don't know who to call Brian. Brian will get you into the right people. Because this is a large venue situation, you have a 2-year warranty on our system. So you got an extra year above and beyond the usual parts and labor warranty. You have 2 years on everything here.
And that's with Perlick?
Yep. Yes. Call Brian. He'll get you squared away. Because if it's a beer thing, he's going to send Dave out anyway, but it's going to be covered under warranty. So that's going to be something Brian's going to need to know. If it's a piece of underbar refrigeration equipment, again, Brian's your first call. If you need more equipment, Brian's your first call. Okay. Even though the factory is literally right down the street, those purchase orders have to take a very circuitous route. It goes from you to Brian to Stafford, back to Brian, finally to us. So we'll get it to you. If you turn to the next page, this is basically Beer Keg 101. If you've never seen the inside of a beer keg, on that left-hand side of the page, you'll see the beer keg with the spout. So it's like a straw in a Coca-Cola cup from McDonald's. It actually draws the product from the bottom of the keg. So with a properly balanced, designed, and factory engineered beer system, you should be able to get almost 100% out of that keg. In the beer industry, we say you always lose 5% to the angels. It just disappears. But you should be able to get a 95% usage out of a keg without any problems whatsoever. If you go out onto your loading dock and you grab those kegs and they're not totally empty, something's wrong. That's the time to start asking questions. The type of system we've engineered here at the Bucks Arena is a beer pump system. That is, we are using a mechanical beer pump to push the beer through the system. So it's not gas pushing that. It's not the CO2. CO2 simply powers a mechanical pump that in turn pushes the beer a long way. The biggest thing I want to tell you guys that you need to cascade down to all your worker bees is don't touch the regulators. Everybody's used to having beer in college. Remember when you're pumping up the beer keg in college? What do you do when you can't get any beer out? Well, it's time to pump up that pressure. Please don't touch the regulators. Only Dave the beer medic and your beer wholesaler should be touching those regulators. Dave's going to know, and you're going to know exactly which pressure that regulator should be set at, because they're all going to be tagged in the cooler.
Are we able to lock those?
I do not know if you do not have locking regulator panels.
Maybe we can get some signs made up so that bartenders don't touch it.
You've got to talk to your beverage managers and say, Do not touch the regulators. If you think there's a problem, talk to your supervisor. There's many reasons why that beer could be slowing down out of the faucet, not necessarily anything having to do with pressure. There'll be lots of things going wrong. But everybody thinks they're a beer expert because they've drunk beer.
I ran the system at the Bradley Center, so.
Okay, so
Probably why I'm.
yeah, good.
Here, so.
So if you turn to this page, well, you'll see the little pumps on the wall. Keep going. One more. There you go. That's what your system looks like, with beer pumps and fobs and everything on the wall. So those beer pumps are powered by CO2. There's a CO2 alarm in each cooler because there's a lot of gas being used. CO2 could hurt you. I mean, if you've ever been in a cooler where the CO2 was left open, you go down real fast. So each cooler has an alarm system in it. Those alarms need to be checked frequently to make sure it's we should have cascaded down to you a spec sheet on those. If you don't have those, I can get them to you. Let Brian know, and I'll send them out in an e-version. But that's not, it's a visual and an audio alarm. And we'll go in there, we'll talk about couplers and what an open coupler is and what a closed coupler is when we get back in there. Now we talked about beer line tubing. You've got about 22,000 feet of beer line in this thing. We talked about cleaning and how it should be cleaned. And I'll be sending you Brewers Association's manuals on that. Again, those were written in the laboratory. In a perfect world, you clean those lines every 2 weeks. If it was Brian and Jeff's restaurant, beer wholesaler would be in there every 2 weeks. Large venue has other considerations, simply being you're going to waste a lot of beer in a 22,000 feet of line pouring beer out every 2 weeks. So there's natural breaks that are going to occur in your schedules. That's a great time to clean lines. Or what I have seen successful in the past is lines are constantly cleaned. I do this stand this week, this stand next week, and a month and a half from now, you're back at stand one. I've seen it done that way too. But beer line cleaning is the toughest part of a beer system. You want to make sure your line cleaner uses electric recirc pumps. These runs are way too long to use hand pumps. If they don't have electric recirc pumps, that should be mandated in your contract. They should always flush with water. It should take a guy about 30 to 40 minutes to do this one bar that we're at. And you only have, 12 faucets here. It should take him a good hour to do 12 faucets correctly, because the chemicals got to circulate in that line for 15 to 20 minutes. Now he'll have multiple lines hooked up at once, and he'll use what's called a jumper system, so the chemicals running out of one faucet into the other, and the whole system's recirculating itself. But it takes an hour to clean this bar correctly. And you guys know you're paying that guy whatever, so the line cleaner wants to get it in and out as soon as he can. You've got to keep your eye on your line cleaning to make sure it's done properly. Or you're going to be in the same boat that a lot of large venues are now, that are 10 years old and looking at a $2 million price tag to put a new beer system in. Because when you remodel, it's not just putting the stuff in, it's tearing the old stuff out.
Right.
So when you look at that beer tower over there, what you're going to have is that beer is kept cold in that tower right up to the tower. That means that beer is sitting at 38 degrees right behind that faucet. That whole tower. And a hot, humid day, you might even see a little condensation on that tower. So that tower is 38 degrees. That beer inside there is at 38 degrees, waiting for that faucet to be opened. So on the tower itself, you have two little things that could go wrong and will drive your beverage managers crazy. First of all, you've all seen those great big tall tap markers all the beer guys are coming out with because they want to market and display their beer. Well, when you get a little 5-foot, 100-pound bartender and she grabs the top of that handle and she yanks it down, she's going to snap it right off. Even though you see those little nubs sticking up, those are stainless steel nubs sticking out of those faucets, a little 5-foot tall bartender will snap that right off if she yanks at the top of your tap handle. You want to grab it right by the base, snap it on, and snap it off. All your people should be trained that way. Snap it open, snap it off. Not this slow pull thing. Boom, boom. It should be that fast. You're going to waste less product. You're going to get a better pour. You're not going to be pouring foam down the drain, which is profit, and your equipment's going to last much longer. The other thing that happens at the faucet is when you do line cleaning, the washer may get unseated, or it may have a tear in it because the line cleaner is slamming his stainless steel parts and pieces around, and he chips your washer. The faucet's going to leak. Well, an inexperienced beverage manager goes, I got a leaky faucet. System's leaking. Well, to me, a systems leak means you've got beer spraying all over the concourse somewhere. A leaky faucet is not a big deal. Call your draft manager. Say, I got some leaky faucets. Your line cleaners or the guy who's cleaning your lines, you call him back in there and say, hey, you left my faucets all leaking. Get your butt back in here and tighten get some new O-rings in here and tighten my faucets. Again, making your vendors do what they're supposed to do is a key. Fobs. Are you all familiar with fobs in the cooler?
I'm not.
That's what it looks like. So here's what happens on a system like this. Back in the day when we all tended bar in college, the bartender knew the keg was empty when he pulled the tap and he got sprayed with beer. That told him the keg was empty. So then what does he do? He goes back to the cooler, which is, in this case, 200 feet away. Uncouples the beer keg, puts a new keg on, couples that beer. Now he goes back to the bar and he's got to repack that line because that beer line was totally empty. Remember? Because it sprayed him with foam, empty line. So now he's at the bar doing this, filling the cup up with foam and dumping it on. That's not foam. What is that? That's beer. That's your money going down the drain. Boom. What a fob does is this. When that beer coming up through the jumper line, the line that goes from the keg to the panel, when that keg is empty, the fob is empty. It empties the fob out. The fob is a little glass container that holds beer. Think of it like a little water tower. So when no beer comes out of the keg, the fob simply drops a plastic cork, seals the line. That line stays packed. That 200 foot of line is still full of beer. The bartender opens the faucet and nothing comes out. So now he just goes back there, changes the keg, flips the switch on the fob to turn the fob back on, comes back out here, and he's immediately pouring beer again with no foam or no waste. Every system has a fob. The trick is, in the heat of battle, they've got to flip that once they change the keg over, they got to flip the switch on the fob to recharge the fob. The fob actually fills up again with beer. It's like that water tank, fill it up again with water to provide pressure for the system. Every line has a fob on it.
Now with that fob, do you turn it down to change the keg, then turn it back up when
No.
you're done changing it, or
You have to, when the keg is empty, you disconnect the keg coupler and connect it to a full keg. You make sure that the faucet out front is closed. You push the vent mechanism down on the top of the fob so no bubbles appear. That's to fill it back up again. Because it's going to empty, there's nothing to flow back. Then you rotate it back over to open the line back up.
But that's what I'm saying. So before you pull that empty keg, you have to close that fob, correct?
Yes. Now this fob should also be cleaned periodically in your beer cleaning procedures. In fact, there's a bypass valve on here that lets you do that.
How long do you recommend on that, sir?
Oh, hell. If you're going to clean every month and a half to 2 months, that's fine. They're going to have, like I said, there's ways to do large venue from a process and a systemic standpoint. If they want to come in here and spend 3 days every month and a half to 2 months cleaning the whole place, that's great. Or if they want to come in once a week and clean X number, that's however you guys choose to do it when you work with your vendor.
So do you recommend when you're closing out the lines to clean out the fob
Absolutely.
at the same time?
Yes. Yeah. And they should be clean. Now, in your closing procedures, do you know if they're going to break down the faucets and clean the faucets every night? Everybody's been in food service for a long time, right? The dirtiest place in a restaurant is the inside of that beer faucet. Because think about it, you have a yeast product running through there all day long. So at night, you turn the lights off, you leave. What's that yeast doing now in this warm? It's growing. That faucet is filthy. So if in your closing procedures, if you're not going to take those faucets out, soak them and put them back on, you need to make sure your line cleaner cleans those faucets. Now, if this was a normal restaurant, again, Brian and Jeff's restaurant, what the line cleaner would do is when he's hooking everything up, he takes those faucets and he dumps them into just a big 5-gallon tub of solution. And they're sitting in there. Then when he's done, he rinses them out, gets his brush, cleans them out, and puts them back on. So that's something you should also consider is, hey, does this include cleaning out my faucets every time you come? But if you're only doing that once every month and a half to 2 months, those are going to be some incredibly gunky faucets. So you might want to think about getting some faucet, and that should be part of your closing procedure, getting a faucet wrench, because it's simply, there's a slip nut on the back of that faucet. You take a faucet wrench, you loosen it, faucet screws off, bada bing, bada boom, you wash it, you clean it out, put it back on, tighten the nut, you're good to go. But that's something a beverage manager or specialist should be doing, not your run-of-the-mill cleaning crew.
If cleaning of the faucets is not done every event, say there's 5 events in a row, once a week, I mean, do you want that done every night?
This goes to the quality of your product. The faucet is the dirtiest place in a restaurant. Usually in a restaurant closing procedure, those are cleaned every night, depending on the restaurant. But in some cases, they're only getting cleaned every other week because the beer guy's cleaning them when he cleans the lines. But letting that faucet sit there overnight in this kind of humidity I'm feeling right now, I mean, you got to have yeast and mold and beer stone growing in there immediately.
I have to come up, Lisa, with a SOP on every concession stand, beer stands, sanitation operating procedure,
but
which
keep in mind,
closing procedures.
Because this involves a wrench and a nut, and I mean, it should be somebody that's trained to do
Yeah,
it.
it's not going to be.
That's a faucet wrench.
It's not. That's not going to be put on cashiers to clean.
No,
those.
absolutely.
So,
it needs to be a beverage tech or a beverage manager, and part of his weekly.
or something that you're going to have to do if you have somebody.
They actually
working
make
with you, 'cause-
they make litmus strips of paper that you can swab inside the faucet that will tell you what the bacteria count is. This is something that's usually not covered by the health department. The beer industry has kind of been overlooked by county health departments forever and ever and ever. So something to consider, how you're going to clean those faucets.
That's something we should discuss.
Here's what a pump panel looks like. Go to one of the. So these are the mechanical pumps I was talking about. Keep going. And we'll go into the coolant. These are the mechanical pumps that are powered by CO2. Now, every time it pumps, if you're standing in a cooler while the event's going, you hear it. That's the CO2 powering the mechanical diaphragm that is actually pushing the beer through the system. There's bypasses on all these that still let the line cleaners do their job effectively. So the cleaning solution bypasses the pump. Cleaning solution doesn't go in the pump at all. It bypasses the pump. And it's all set up and your line cleaner already knows how to do that.
Don't touch pumps. Leave them alone.
Don't touch the regulators.
Don't.
See, if you see these regulators under the pumps, you see those goldish dials. Those are the dials that actually change the pressure setting.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
what it is. I'm saying, don't touch any of it.
Don't touch
anything on this piece of paper.
Don't touch it.
Do not touch a single thing on that
Don't
piece of
touch
paper.
it. If you have a question, first call is to your beer guy. The beer guy goes, "This is way beyond me." Second call is to Dave.
I was thinking about maybe we could talk to Ken and have some signs made up. Don't touch the regulators because
Absolutely.
People are going to wind up doing.
Everybody thinks they know how to do beer because they drank beer in college.
Well, there's a locking system that we can put over those as well, if we need to.
I will tell you, talk to the draft techs that come and service your equipment, they'll tell you 50% of their day is spent changing the pressures back to what they should be in restaurants because the restaurant manager's sitting on, my beer system's all messed up, what the hell's happening? Somebody touched your regulators. I guarantee you 50% of his day is fixing regulator pressures. Let's see. I have some troubleshooting. The last 3 pages are all troubleshooting. So let's get into beer performance and what you guys should look for. Beer is meant to be served at 38 degrees. Your beverage cooler is going to run about 34 to 35 degrees, okay? That's where you want it. Now, it takes a half an hour to an hour. You guys are loading kegs into that cooler door is open, everything in there is heating up. Once those kegs go above 42 degrees, it starts foaming at the faucet. Temperature rises on beer within a half an hour of having that door open. It takes 24 hours to cool the beer down. So, if somebody screwed up their ordering and you got a delivery that morning and you got a game that night and they tap a hot keg, you're never going to solve that problem. It's going to foam all night long. That beer cooler temperature goes above 41 degrees, you're going to have problems. You're going to foam at the faucet. With a pump system, that's pretty much all that can go wrong is temperature. As long as no one touched the regulator panel and your pressures are good, everything's going to be a temperature issue. 90% of the service calls are customer air issues. I came here to fix this system. They're screaming at me. Temperature's 45 degrees in the cooler. Somebody left the door open all day. You keep your cooler temperature low, you'll have no problem with your beer system. The other thing that affects it is the power pack. When we walk back there, I'll show you the power pack. You'll see a temperature gauge in the power pack. That's the temperature of the glycol coming back. So the glycol makes its downward leg, and then it makes the trip back to the refrigeration unit to get cooled down again. Glycol is just food-grade antifreeze that is circulating through your beer python line. You've all seen a python line, right? So that beer has got to be kept at 38 degrees from the cooler to the faucet. So it's kept that way with glycol constantly recirculating. If you cut a python line open, you'll see every beer line touching the coolant line. So that coolant line is cooling every line by contact. There's a glycol loop inside that tower, touching each faucet, making sure the faucet stays at 38 degrees. So from the cooler to the faucet, that beer is kept at 38 degrees. Now, when the glycol finishes the loop and starts its downward journey back to the power pack, that temperature readout you see is what the glycol is coming back at. And usually that's going to be anywhere from 33 to 29 degrees. And that's a great temperature. So even on its downward leg, it's coming back really cold. So the power pack has been designed to run 24/7. You don't need to turn it off. You shouldn't turn it off. You should never turn it off. Let's say somebody thought it would be a great idea to save money and power by turning the power pack off. What happens to the beer inside that python line?
Starts warming up.
What happens when beer gets warm? How would you like to have the first beer out of that faucet that night when you show up at the Bucks and you just paid $200 to get in here? Power packs are designed to run 24/7. You're not going to say that would be like telling your husband you're going to save money by turning the refrigerator off on Sunday when you guys go to church. Just let it run. If you're looking to save money, that's not the place to do it. Your refrigeration isn't going to kill you. If we want to go back in the cooler now, we can talk about power packs, and everything in here is just good reading. Everything in here is taken from the Brewers Association manuals, and I will send you those manuals, the e-version of all those manuals, and you will get the scientific, a lot of scientific reasons why things are done, but you'll also get the standards they've set. They're the guys, and they're a nonprofit association that all the wholesalers, microbrews, they all belong to. They're the ones that come up with beer lines need to be cleaned every 2 weeks. You need to do this, you need to do that. Large venue settings are different, as we talked about, and there's reasons for that. You can't empty out 22,000 feet of line every 2 weeks and expect to make money. All right, so this is your power pack. Every beer system has its own power pack. In some cases, you'll see multiple power packs sitting outside the cooler. In this case, this power pack is dedicated to this stand. Usually there's one power pack per stand. But the beer medic will know all about that since he's helping to start this up, so he's going to be very familiar with your system. The one thing you need to understand is this readout. As we talked about before, this is the temperature of the glycol coming back from those towers outside. So it's going out of here really cold, and it's coming back really cold, so you know. Now, as you start pouring beer, this may creep up a little bit, but you never want to see it get above 33, 34 degrees. Once you start having problems out front, that is you're getting foamy beer, come back here, this is the first thing you check. Make sure your power pack is still cooling, because inside here is a glycol bath. So that warm glycol coming back from the trip to cool the tower down, goes back in here, hits the refrigeration plate, gets cooled off again, and goes back out again at 32 or 29 degrees, whatever it's cooling at. So that glycol always stays cold. So this is the first thing you check if you're starting to get foamy beer. What's the temperature of my glycol unit? Good temperature? Okay. Check the temperature of your cooler. What's my cooler? 35 degrees. Perfect. So this is the inside of the infamous beer cooler. This is the jumper line. You see this clear vinyl line? This is called your jumper line. This is the one that should be replaced every year, and your wholesaler should do that. You know why? Because it's his beer you're pouring. This is going to any mold or anything in this line is going to affect the taste of his product.
So you're saying once per year? Sir.
Once a year, these should be changed out. Absolutely. Now this is a beer coupler. This is in the closed position. I don't want to contaminate that. But if I hook this to the coupler, I would pull this out and snap this down. Beer would immediately start to flow into this line. Okay? To take it off, I do that. I pull the handle out and I lift it up like it is right here. And that's the way it should be left. If somebody plays around with this thing and pushes it back down and just leaves it hanging here, it's pouring CO2 out into this cooler, and that's how people die. Well, people have been knowing, you play around with this, you're standing here, you're talking to people, you're playing with the coupler. If you put the coupler in the down position, not attached to the beer cooler, it's pouring CO2 out into this atmosphere. And then you die. And even though there is an alarm in here, and we'll point out the alarm as we go out, don't play around with these things. They're hooked up to live CO2. The CO2 is on all the time. There's no, unless you turn the CO2 off at the main tank farm, that CO2 is live in here all the time. We're just waiting to come out.
We do turn CO2 tanks off every night.
Okay. Good to know.
But it still shouldn't be played with.
Right. Now, as you see here, each of these fobs is labeled by which faucet they go to. And you read left to right. Okay, 5, 6. So as you look at the faucet, it's the same thing. So if I got my beer tower right here, faucet number 5 would be the far left. So you know when you come back in here, this is the fob that feeds faucet number 5. So when you cook your kegs up, make sure you got the right beer to the right faucet. I know it's not rocket science, but you would be surprised how people say, hey, my beer tastes funny. You got the wrong beer hooked up. It's been known to happen. These are the regulators right here that you never want to touch. They're going to be preset. If you look right here, can you zoom in on that? We're going to have, that's going to be filled out. It doesn't mean your guys should touch them. Unless I'm the beverage manager, I don't want anybody touching these things. Now, once Dave, who is our installer, starts working with the beverage manager, he's going to get confident enough to do this, or in a past life, he may have already done this. But your worker bees who think they're helping you out by hiking that pressure up, you don't want them to do that.
When we change kegs, does this have to get cleaned periodically, or?
The beer guy should do that when your line cleaner should do that when he cleans the lines. Couplers get dirty just like everything else. So from time to time, he should change out your couplers. Usually, couplers stay in place until they're broken. The cost of couplers has gone down so much. Back in the day, a wholesaler was paying maybe 30 bucks a coupler. Now they're down in the range of 16, 17 bucks a coupler. That's a disposable item. Used to be they'd take these, swap them out, and they'd go back to the shop and rebuild them. Now they just throw them away. But like anything else, this should be cleaned from time to time. So, but these usually simply stay in place until they get disgusting or they're broken. So if once a year you've got them cleaning the jumper lines, I would also tell them, hey guys, great time to clean the couplers. Again, if you don't force your vendor to do that, he's not gonna do it for you. We've all worked with vendors before, and you know you're working with the least common denominator. Any other questions here in the cooler? If you turn around right here, here's your CO2 probe. This is your CO2 alarm. So this is going to read CO2 buildup. CO2 is heavier than air, so it's going to start building up the ground up, which is why you'll always see the CO2 monitor mounted low, like it is here.
So just for the training,
Yes.
as far as the system is,
Yes.
CO2 off,
Yes.
CO2 on.
Yep.
And then when you switch a keg, this will go to red.
This will be empty.
This will be empty.
And the float this white float you see in there, that'll actually be here at the bottom because it shuts off the beer line.
And then you'll turn this off.
Yep.
Change the keg.
Yep.
Push this
Yep.
to fill it back
up.
And turn this
flip it
back down.
on. Yep. That's exactly how it is.
Questions?
No, it's just
Temperature. If you're getting foamy beer, first thing you do is check your temperatures. That's pretty much all that can go wrong with a pump system. If no one's touched these regulators, once in a while a pump goes out, but I've seen these pumps run for 12 years. And this is third generation. So back in the day, you couldn't bypass these pumps to clean the lines. Now you can. So and then there's the audio and visual CO2 alarm up there. Each and every cooler has one of those. And make sure I send you the spec sheet on those so you know how the operating manual. Something you should have on file. Did you read about the guy from TurboTap who was found dead in the beer cooler at the Atlanta Braves Stadium 3 weeks ago?
no, never heard about that.
First thing everybody in the industry said, I wonder if it was a CO2 issue. The story kind of dropped out of the news. I don't think they've said yet what happened to the guy, but everybody in the beer industry said, I wonder if it was a CO2 thing, because he was in there late at night. He was putting turbo taps on the faucets, which meant he would have needed to change the pressure in the cooler. He got locked in. So the first thing everybody thought was that a CO2 issue? So those alarms will save your life. What else, guys?
Basically, we should, like you said, develop a good relationship with who's ever going to be changing that stuff.
Yep.
And then once per year, change the jumper cables.
Yep.
Clean couplers.
Yep.
Make sure
Now, see,
that
and
no one's
keep
not
in
touching
mind,
the regulators.
your wholesale, and I gave the GM at Ford Field just hell on this shit. Because his wholesaler, all these wholesalers are owned by independent entrepreneurs. They're like franchises. Miller Coors doesn't own this guy. There's a Brian Bender out there that owns this wholesaler, and he's got pride in his product. And you better believe he brings all his highfalutin buddies up here to a game to drink his beer because he's sponsoring the arena. He's got skin in the game. You make that wholesaler perform for you. That's his beer you're pouring. Believe me, the owner of that wholesaler division wants that beer to taste great. So if he's got dirty couplers and dirty jumper lines, you got to ask him, why aren't you guys looking at this stuff? You would do this for Joe Blow's restaurant. Why aren't you doing it for the Milwaukee Bucks? Make your vendors do their job. All right, if you look at these faucets, you'll see this condensation on here. That's what I was telling you about. That glycol, the system's running. And even though there's not beer hooked up to this, the glycol is recirculating in there already. So there's a copper glycol loop inside of here that's touching each and every one of these faucets. And you can touch the faucet and feel it. It's cold, keeping that beer at 38 degrees. Again, when you're serving it, snap it on, snap it off. And you should be grabbing it right just like that. Not yanking it down from the top. Just boom, boom. Very simple. Now, that wrench Brian had, you come over here when you look, that wrench had a little nipple on it. You see these holes on the slip ring?
Yes.
It just slips in there and you just crank it up. One half a turn to loosen this, and you can loosen it by hand. Faucet screws right off.
And then you soak it and clean that. Do you recommend soaking it overnight and then attaching it the next day, or how do you do that?
Any of their normal cleaning procedures will be just fine. They usually sell little faucet. You can go to the Granger catalog, get little faucet brushes, clean it out, put them back on. If you do them once a week, that's probably fine. Or like I said, instead of doing them all at once.
I like your idea of rotating.
Yeah, see the little nipple right there? Goes like right there. There you go, faucet comes right off. And you tighten her back up. You're good. Good to go.
And you're saying that's something that the person that's going to be tuning our lines can
When they clean the lines, these faucets come out. And what he actually does is he puts little jumpers from here to here, and then from here to here. So he does kind of like daisy chain. He'll daisy chain them together. So you've got the cleaner going out one faucet, and it goes in this way, loops around. This is all happening behind the scenes because he's actually in the cooler. He's got your couplers hooked up to his recirculating pump with his chemicals in there. So he's in the cooler. He's already hooked his equipment up. He turns the pump on, and that pump is circulating chemicals through all these lines. Out one faucet, into another. That's how it works. Can you picture that? If you go online and do things like beer line cleaning, recirculating pumps, you'll get a lot of good pictures and diagrams. Once you've seen it once, you go, oh, hell yeah. It's like baseball. Until you've actually seen it done, you can't picture it how the hell it would work in your mind. What did I miss, Brian?
That's it so far.
Questions?
Do we? So if we're cleaning these things ourselves as a cleaning procedure, I'll get one of those tools. Is that something we're going to do? Or are we going to have
I have about 20 of them.
And then you want to order some O-rings and some washers because you'll always, these things wear out. If you're cleaning them yourself, you should always have these in your toolkit. If you got those in a toolkit, you want to order 100 washers, 100 O-rings, like anything else, just like you would working on plumbing at home. You got to have them.
What did you guys do?
Order those through Perlick.
You can order those through Perlick. You can call Brian. He can get them for you.
What did we do at the Bradley Center pertaining to cleaning? Who was responsible for that?
The beer cleaning people.
They always did.
Yeah.
However you guys choose to go about this is your internal process. If this was a restaurant, these would get cleaned probably every night in the bar closing procedure. She'd take these, as your bartender was closing down for the night, he'd take them off, throw them in a bucket. In the morning, he puts them back on as he's setting the bar back up. That's in a good restaurant. Mostly the only time these ever get cleaned is when the line cleaning guy comes around. But since you're not going to be line cleaning every other week, it really behooves you guys to clean these out.
On a daily basis or after?
At least once a week.
Once a week, minimum.
Maybe two. I mean, it all goes to, the large venue is the harshest environment for food and equipment. The equipment gets used more, it gets beat up more. You guys know what cleaning is like. You've cleaned these kitchens before. It's the harshest environment you can have on equipment. The customer experience is getting to be a huge thing within large venue. I mean, they're paying what used to be when we were kids. We could go see a game with $5 in our pocket. Now you got to hit the ATM before you come in. So, customer experience is key. They're already paying outrageous prices for beer. Let's make it a good beer.